write to complete that second part of the trilogy. But this is my first novel, and I'm very proud of myself because
I'm very proud of you.
it is hard to do this. Actually, when I originally wrote this, I only had maybe 100-something pages, and I remember sitting in my living room as I went back to this book last year. And, you know, some of my favorite authors, of course, is Stephenie Meyer, who did the Twilight series, and J.K. Rowling, who did the Harry Potter. And I said, I want to be able to write a 300-page book like them. And I was just shouting it out, you know, and I was like, okay, Lord, you're going to have to put this in me. And he did. The book is 287 pages. So I thank God because he just overflowed and was able to put out a 300-page book, and I was able to get it done. And like I said, I went through a tumultuous 2010. It was unbearable. I mean, I had some issues that just, in a short period of time, I had 2 car accidents. One that I got injured in both of them, but one of them I got injured and it messed up my car. My mother passed. My fiance broke up with me, and then I had family members that had surgery. So I went through a very, very tough time, and that's why I said this book was my saving grace, because as I was feeling like control was being lost, like I couldn't save anybody, I couldn't help anybody, and it wasn't about helping everybody, it was about helping myself. And so I finally just picked up this book and worked on it, and I had to be a little bit selfish, and some people were not really used to that, because most people were used to calling me up and saying, Angie, can you do this? Angela, can you do this? I want, can you? You know, and I was like, no. Sometimes I think that people were really shocked of me saying no, because they're not used to me saying no, but I didn't have any, after all that stuff, I just had nothing left to give. And so what little bit I did, I had to pull into something that I could produce, that I had control over. Because I don't have control over everybody else's actions or reactions. I have control over my own. And that's a lesson that I had to learn myself. And my dad used to say it to me all the time. You know, control yourself. Do what you can control, because you can't control everybody else. And that was hard for me to let go of. That was hard for me to focus on myself, and I finally did. And like I said, it's opened many, many doors. I'm on the radio. I'm on WEFT 90.1 every Thursday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. And if I hadn't wrote this book, I wouldn't have been on the radio, because that was funny. Because actually what I had originally did was I was going to contact WEFT and ask them if they wanted to interview me about my book. And then it just so happens that they were going through a training because they needed they call them air shifters instead of DJs. And so I was like, well, let me go through the training now. I'll have my own show and talk about my book myself. And that's what I did. And when they had all some really good advice, because when you self-publish, you might not sell very many copies. You know, and it's hard for you to get a publisher, because there's so many authors out there that are trying to fight for that same publishing company. And so I just want to keep writing, and I encourage anybody who's doing that to keep writing. I have had a couple people call me up and say, you know, I got a book of poems, how do I self-publish it? And I tell them exactly what I did, you know, go to Lulu, you know. But everything I'm just learning, and I'm continuing to learn. So any suggestions, I'm always open to suggestions. I'm always open to somebody saying, you know, maybe try this, or try to go here. And I must admit that God has really blessed me and moved me into many different realms. I would have never thought I'd be standing here, and I thank you ladies. I wish somebody was here, but I thank you ladies that you opened up your space to me so that we can have this event here. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How long did it take you to write it, and what were some of the technical things that you did in moments when you felt like you just, you know, you couldn't go any further? What were some of the strategies you had?
That's kind of funny, because since I actually started writing this book 5 years ago, I actually put it away At the time, I was living in what I call the projects. And anybody who knows Scottswood, Woodstone area, yeah, it's the projects. So, because it's Urbana, and Miss Terry has been there, so, you know, seriously, it was the projects. And I actually, a lot of the stuff that I had in my apartment there, because it had roaches in it, I wouldn't take it to my new place. But this manuscript survived. So it came, and then it was like sitting for a very long time because I had to deal with some issues with my daughter. Even though she's high functioning, she has autism. And so I've had to deal with the school situation with her, and I actually just in 2009 withdrew her and decided to start homeschooling her. And so I started writing the book 5 years ago, and I don't even know how long I took writing that book, but when I went back to it last year, it probably took me another 3 months of finishing it up, and then I was able to, and I'm still always in editing mode, but I'm going to do one final edit, and then after that, because otherwise you get so caught up in edit, yes, and that is one thing about me. Anybody who's worked with me know that I'm like a perfectionist, and so I have to get out of that anal mode of being just wanting it perfect with that, and just putting it out there. And that's one of the things, the techniques that I had to get over for myself, because I'm one of those people that, well, it's not perfect, I don't want to release it. And I just had to.
From the Afro-American Club, I thank you for being just that way, because that's how we ended up making all that money, and I mean,
And yeah, it had some of the best shows to this day.
To this day.
So
sometimes that comes in.
Yeah.
You know, it's good that you're like that, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
and sometimes it's not when you can't finish projects. And I have a lot of stuff that I start and don't finish because I want to be that perfectionist. As far as techniques
You must
go,
be a Virgo.
I am not. I'm an Aries.
Okay.
So, yeah, I probably should be. But no, I'm an Aries, and I'm on the cusp, so I go back and forth between an Aries and a Pisces. So, I say I cancel myself out because Pisces is a water sign and Aries is fire, so I cancel myself out. As far as techniques go, when I was actually when I went back to this, I was so engrossed in trying to finish it that I just kept going. But my biggest technique, honestly, was me praying to God, really. Seriously, I was just like, okay, Lord, I need something. And then I would wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and this big rush would just hit me. And so I'd be in my bedroom just writing on slips of paper because I had this big inspiration of what to add. And that's what I kind of do. I let it come naturally, because if I try to force it, it just won't go. You really have to let your creativeness flow naturally. And that's one thing that I've learned from fashion design. So I kind of already knew that technique, because as a fashion designer, you have to let it just come to you and flow to you, because if you try to force it, you'll have the worst things. And I've made some things that are not too good, but I've made some things that are darn good. That I have to sit back and say, I'm impressed with myself. So this is one of those things of where it's just like it's got to naturally come from inside of you and from that heart region. In order to get it out there, because if you try to force it, then your ego gets into the way, and you're just writing a bunch of garbage, really. Yes, ma'am.
When do you think your next book will come out?
The 35 poems, I'm hoping it will come out by the end of April. So now that I've kind of gotten things settled within a dream, I'll be finishing with 35 poems. Now, you can't just treat me any kind of way. I just started on that with some new enlightenment, so that's going to take me a while. That'll probably take me a good 6 months because I actually am observing different relationships and listening to my friends and people around me as they discuss their relationships. And so that's going to take me a while, because I'm going to be doing research as well. So not only just research between my friends, but just, statistic-wise out there, what people are feeling and thinking.
You mentioned before about the Steve Harvey book, amazed how many books he sold, but I think he kind of show like this need, like African American women are looking for some guidance, like a book that, you know, speaks
Yeah.
to them and speaks to their experience.
Right, and that's why I said it was kind of dangerous, because when you're in that, and I don't want to say desperate, but almost so, that you know, you're saying, okay, who can tell me how to understand, especially black men, and you know, so when Steve Harvey comes out with this stuff and he's telling these women all these different techniques, and you know, anybody who's known, Steve Harvey's been married, this is his third marriage. So, and his wife's third marriage. So, you know, when you start thinking, when you start actually looking at Steve Harvey the person, and you're saying, okay, he's giving relationship advice, but he's working on his third marriage, his wife is working on her third marriage, and he's a comedian. So, you know, do you really think that he's really being straightforward with you, or do you think that he's trying to look for material to do his comedy bit?
And it makes me wonder, like, how open is the publishing world to, like, black female writers, you know? Have you gotten, like, a sense of that? Because, you know, I think, I personally, when I look at romance books, I try to find, like, black authors I feel, you know, I can feel a connection to, like,
Yeah.
okay, I can understand this, I can relate to this.
And that's what
you know?
I did.
And it's not a lot of books, you know, a lot of books you mentioned are books that, you know, oh, I've heard of that. Because
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough.
It's like a
Authors out
handful
there.
of black female authors out there. Like I said, Mary B. Morrison, Brenda Jackson, Beverly Jenkins are three. Mary B. Morrison, who also writes under an alter ego that's called Honeybee, and that's the, woo, she's off the chain. Totally different from her regular works, but woo, boy. She got some stuff in her books that I'm just like, wow, I can't even imagine. But yeah, I've noticed that it's just been a handful. Every now and then, what I do is I look at the new book section, especially like since we have the Douglas Branch Library. Of course, they order a lot of the books by black authors, so I'll go to the new section to see if I find any new authors. But yeah, I still think that the publishing world, as far as just black authors in general, I don't think they're that receptive to black authors. And so I think you really have to have some connections in order to get your book published by a major publisher. I really believe that. Now, I haven't gone after a major publisher as of yet, so that'll be something that I'll be experiencing soon. But as far as right now, I don't think it's I get a sense that it's not very many black authors out there that are as recognized as their white counterparts. Yes.
I just want to say again how proud I am of you.
Aw, thank you.
I already did this about
You're so
I'm
sweet.
so inspired by your story and your light and just,
Aw,
I'm so
you're
happy
so
for you.
sweet. Oh, thank you.
Roll 'em.
You're-
Roll the camera.
Thank you. Anything else?
Well, my last little thought is, in his next book, you